beautiful people. In this video, I will show you how I added pops of color to drawer units in my creative space, how I store my stencils, and how I found something in a thrift store that is helping me to organize, and it only costs $1. Of course, I stenciled on it. So let's get started with some pop and color. Okay, we are ready for step 1. In this step, I'm going to prepare the surface, and in this case, I'm using Yupo and the white version. There's also a transparent and there's a heavy paper. For this particular project, I'm just using the regular white. Here you see this really nice stencil. It is L669. My plan is to create these 3x3 little cool designs and pops of color. So right here I just have this black piece of cardstock here so you can see this really cool design. So when I remove it, you can see my setup. I have adhered the Yupo paper, 9x12, same size as the stencil, to this non-stick surface with just some double stick tape because I want to hold it in place. And actually I shouldn't be touching the paper too much, but I'm just so excited to get started. And then I have put my stencil here on a hinge with some low-tack tape so that the design is right in line with the paper. I'm using Liquitex Gloss Gel because I want this to be a real bright glossy pop of color, and a palette knife. And I'm just going to spread a thin layer of the gel across the stencil, trying to make sure that I get every opening. Uh-oh, it looks like I might have a little color from something else I did, but I'm not worried about that because I'm going to be adding color to this. So I'm just spreading it just like you do cake icing. I have my palette knife on a little bit of an angle here, spreading it all the way down to the bottom. Oops. And then what I want to do is just check it right quick to make sure I got a nice pattern. And looks like I did miss a spot over here, so I'm going to come back over here and just fill in my icing. I don't want to take too long because I don't want it to start drying before I get done. So looks like I got, oh, I missed another spot over here. This is why I made a hinge, so I could keep it right in place and check. Yeah, white on white, it's not always easy to tell where you've been when you have the same color. So I'll just go across this way. I'm not going to waste any of it. I'll put it right back in the jar. Okay, I'm checking to make sure, and looks like I hit all the spots. So now what I'll do is go take this and put this in some water and we'll rub off my stencil with a soft brush, clean it off so I can get all this paste off before it dries. And so that is the end of step 1. Step 2 is next, where we add some color. Okay, here we are in step 2. It's time to add color. After the paste has completely dried, I'm ready to add color. So before we talk about color, I want to talk about safety first. I'm going to be using alcohol inks to add color, and so it's important that when you're using alcohol inks that you work in a well-ventilated area. You protect yourself. You see I'm wearing gloves. You also protect your work surface and your clothes because the inks will stain. So in thinking about how I wanted to add color, I took out my color wheel. This is something I use all the time in my art. Even though I know the basics, you know, like blue and yellow make green, I really like to be mindful of the colors that are next to each other, the complementary colors, the cool colors, the warm colors, you know, all the colors, because I just love all the colors. So I decided I wanted to use cool colors, so I have lined my inks up here that I'm going to use. I want to have everything accessible so I don't have to think about it and getting something else out when I am coloring. So what I like to do is, when I think about my color, is I include a light color. In this case, I picked a yellow. This one is by Pinata. I'm using Pinata and Tim Holtz inks. A dark color, and here I use indigo. And then I also like to add a white and or a black and a metal. So in this case, I'm using Snowcap and also this Rich Gold by Pinata. So I waited to take the tops off because I like to shake them right before I use them. So now I'm ready to add color. So I'm going to use the drip and tilt technique, which basically I'm just dripping color and then I'm going to pick up my piece and tilt it. Now what I like to do also is to put my actual piece, my substrate, in this case, remember it's the Yupo, on a board that's a little bit larger so I can pick up the board and tilt. You can also, you know, pick up the paper directly, but you risk getting the ink directly on your fingers. So I protected my surface. I have my little bit larger board that was just a piece of cardboard from some packaging, and I'm ready. So I'm going to use some blending solution first, and this just helps the colors move easier. And then I'm just going to start adding color. So since I know that I have 9 little squares here, actually 12 little squares here, I'm just adding a little bit of color in each section. I want them to be similar, but they don't have to be exactly alike because I have the color theme that will be throughout all the pieces. So I'm just gonna add color and start moving it around. And I'm not moving it around too much because I want them to mix, but I don't want them to overmix. I want all that bright, beautiful color to show as separated, not just all blend into one color. So I'm adding in areas where I want more, like more darks, more lights. And at this point, it's just like, I'm just looking for something that makes me happy. I'm not, you know, there's not a real method to what I'm doing, except that when I have a lot of light in one area or a lot of dark, I just want to add some of the opposite. So blending, making sure color gets everywhere because I'm going to use every bit of this Yupo. When I cut it up, since it's 9 by 12, I'm cutting up into 3 by 3 pieces that I'm going to put in my creative space on some furniture to give it a pop of color. So now I'm ready to start adding some of the white and some of the gold. So I'm a little bit liberal, maybe a lot of bit liberal, because I like the contrast that it makes. So here again, I'm going to add some color. And I'm trying to keep it all on the board because when it sets up, it's really vibrant. And so I want to keep all that color on my piece. And in some places you'll notice that color doesn't fill in. This could be because maybe there was a little fingerprints or something on there, or just some little spot. So I just use my fingers to encourage the color. I mentioned in the first video when I was getting ready to add the paste, you know, about try not to touch it so much, the Yupo paper, and that's one of the reasons why, because it will resist the color. So I'm just making sure it fills in. I want a little bit more white. And if there's a color or an area that you think is just too much color, you can always dab it off with a paper towel. I don't know if there's ever too much color for me. Okay, now I'm going to set it down a little bit and just add a little blending solution. And basically, this is what I do. I mean, I just kind of go back and forth, adding, encouraging color in spots if it doesn't get in there where I want it. I just dab so the color blends. And the beautiful thing about alcohol inks is you don't have to do too much because they will blend naturally themselves. Okay, so I am liking this right about here, so I think I'm gonna stop in a second, just a second. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here, and then the next step we'll do after this is completely dry is I'm going to cut out the pieces. After the piece dried, I took it outside and sprayed it with this Krylon Varnish spray. I just followed the directions on the can as far as how long to shake it and how far away to spray it, and waited for it to dry in between. So now it's all dry and I'm ready to cut. So I am going to use this Tim Holtz tonic cutter. And I'm going to cut in 3 by 3 pieces. Now I have all my beautiful squares that I can use to add pops of color in my creative space. Okay, now it's time to adhere the pieces to my furniture. So I chose matte medium for my adhesive. There's a number of ways you can adhere, but I chose matte medium. And I also put a piece of double-side sticky tape onto the center to help hold it in place while the medium was drying. And basically, I'm just eyeballing it. Now, I decided to do every other drawer because I'm just adding pops of color. So my skinnier drawers, it like just fits, which I really like. So I'm just eyeballing it, kind of just lining them up. Pressing the center so it holds it in place, and then the corners. And I like how it looks with all that white. It's just a pop of color. So I'm going to finish doing all of my drawers, and then I'll come back and give you a tour of my creative space. What you're seeing right now is the pops of color that I added. I finished putting them on the 3 Ikea Alex drawer sets that I have. So in this first drawer set, I want to share with you where I keep my stencils and how I store them. So right here, I have just an envelope, one of the envelopes that we get in StencilClub, or if you've ever ordered stencils, you get it when you order the stencils in mail. The ones that I have in here are stencils that either they're my favorite or I plan to use them. I just want to have them quick at hand. Or I've ordered them and haven't used them, but I know I'm going to use them soon, so I put them in here. For my smaller stencils, I use this little case that I got at Joann's with a coupon. And the first thing in here is actually some rubber stamps. These are by Mary Nasser. You can get them at Etsy, and they actually complement some stencils that she designed for Stencil Girls, so I keep them close. My masks, so I can easily find them, I put them in these little plastic zip bags or snap bags to keep them handy. in here I have my smaller stencils, the mini ones, the 4x4s, and the 6x6. If they came in some type of set, I clip them together just so I can easily find them because they coordinate so well. And I don't keep them in any kind of order. I think, for one thing, it'd be hard to. And the other thing is, I actually like to look through my stencils. Like sometimes I'll have a design in mind, I have a stencil in mind that I really want to use, but by the time I look through all these stencils to find that one, I've gotten ideas that will either complement the particular art piece I'm working on, or it replaces the one that I originally thought about, or get new ideas, and then I'll take them and I'll pull them aside and I'll put them in here for short-term designs. So this is where I keep my smaller stencils. And then my larger stencils, I keep in this drawer in a scrap book case. I think that scrapbook paper, I think that's what it was originally made for because it holds 12 by 12. And the stencils, all of Maribeth's larger stencils are 9 by 12. Well, except for the really big ones where you can do like stenciling on the wall. But the standard size large ones is 9 by 12, and they fit nicely in this case. And it's getting to the time where I need a second case. But as with my smaller stencils, they're not in any kind of order. Usually what happens is my latest ones get put on top, but then I'll be working on a project, so I'll come, you know, rummage through here for that one stencil I'm looking for, find a few more that I can use, and then they end up in any kind of order. But that's okay for me because, like I said, I really like to look through my stencils because I have so many now, I cannot remember what designs I have, and I get inspired every time I have to go through the whole set. So that's how I store my stencils. And then I have one other place that I put my stencils, which I'll show you in just a moment. But then continuing to move around my creative space here, I have so much stuff. I'm not going to go through every drawer, but I just want to give you an idea of how I organize. I do try to put items that are alike together. For example, stamp making. I like to make stamps, so I have in this drawer like all the stuff I need to make my own rubber stamps. Plus I have a few other things because I had more space. So that happens sometimes where I shove things in. In this tower, I have all my stamps that have wood on them, my wood-mounted stamps. And I usually put them by theme or by manufacturer. At the top, these are some things that are homemade. I actually got this little Lazy Susan from a grocery store near where I live, Meijer. I'm in Michigan. I got it from Meijer. And these little jars I got at Hobby Lobby for 50% off. And then I just used some really strong glue to glue the jars on there. And they make for a really nice little Lazy Susan for my brushes. And for this, you may have seen, I did this in an earlier video for Stencil Girl, where I did painted on glass. And so this is one of the pieces that I painted on, and that holds my stencil brushes. This is this Lazy Susan is very special to me. It came from my Aunt Pris's house, and then my husband cut these PVC pipes down, and I just painted them with acrylic paint, and they hold my pencils. Moving around the room, I got that from Ikea. Probably all of you that's watching this have one of those, or like 90%, because they were really popular a short time ago. It just holds more stuff. And then this is my desk where I create, and I have a lot of markers. I love markers. I'm certified in like 3 different types of markers, both alcohol and water-based markers, just because I love them so much. I got a bunch of my Copics missing right now because they're all in a bag that I use out in front of the TV because football season has started or about to start. I've been watching preseason football, and I usually color while I'm watching football games. Here on the wall is my special item that I found at the secondhand shop where I painted it. There's before and after shots. After this, I'm going to attach some photos. But I painted it, and I used my brush art stencil, brush lettering stencil, to add words on it, envelopes, base cards, and layer cards. And this makes greeting cards, making greeting cards much easier for me and more efficient, because I used to have everything under my desk, which I thought was efficient because I could just grab it, but having it right here at arm's length is much better, much more efficient for me. And when I made this, I didn't have anything in it, and I had up here Refresh, Renew, Restore, which I thought was just so appropriate, not only for the piece, but just something I like to keep in mind. And it was perfect, and then I put my envelopes in there and it covered it up. But the point is, I know it's there, and when I need it, I can move the envelopes and see it, just to get a little refreshed. Also on this wall, I just want to share, up in the left are two pieces that I did at a workshop with Mary Beth and Seth. My daughter and I had a mother-daughter weekend, and we just had a fabulous time in St. Louis at Mary Beth's studio, and that is a piece that I made. To the right of it is a piece that I won as part of StencilClub. What happens when you're in StencilClub at the beginning of the month, the artist for that month that designed the stencils will create a piece and share it as just some inspiration for the design that they made, and they give that away to a StencilClub member, and I was fortunate enough to win that piece. So I was all excited, and it sits there. Below that is something my daughter made for me for Mother's Day with my two children that I birthed, and then my other two children that my two children I birthed married, so I have 4 children. And then that is the other place where I mentioned I store my stencils. Stencils that I'm using right now or that I use often, I just hang them up right over my desk because I find it really easy to just grab them and I don't have to look through. So there's my markers. I mentioned that. My desktop, I try to clean it off. I'm like one of those people, I like to start with a clean surface. So I try to keep that area clean, but to the right, to the left, and in front of it is just pile with stuff. Things that I use often, I keep on my desk that are accessible. And then over here, I just have a couple bookcases that store my paint supplies, my journals, my books, just, you know, more stuff. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this video inspired you in some way. Take care and stay positive.